Members, if you will join me on the dais so we can get our meeting underway, would appreciate it. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. The informal meeting of the Richmond City Council will now come to order. Madam Clerk, if you will provide the chamber emergency evacuation announcement, followed by the roll call and then docket review.
Upon activation of the emergency alarm signal, all persons should immediately exit the building. Please use the exits to the left or right front of the council chamber or the east or west stairwell outside the rear doors of the chamber. Do not use elevators or escalators. After exiting the building, proceed down 9th Street and enter the assembly area located in the Public Safety Building parking lot. Able persons should assist visually and hearing impaired visitors with exiting the building. And Madam President, for the record, all members are in attendance this evening with the exception of Councilor Trammell. You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's proceed with the docket review.
Starting with the consent agenda, item number 1, ordinance 2025-014. Planning Commission recommended a continuance with this item. So this item is to be continued until the June 23rd council meeting. Item 2, ordinance 2025-032. This paper is to be continued to the June 23rd council meeting per the patron's request. Item 3, ordinance 2025-046. This paper is to be continued to the June 9th council meeting, awaiting an amendment. Items 4 and 5, ordinance 2025-078 and 2025-084. Both papers are to be amended later this evening and then continue to the June 23rd council meeting. Items 6 through 12, ordinance 2025-086, 087, 090, 091, 093, 095, and 096. Planning Commission recommended approval. Items 13 and 14, ordinance 2025-097 and 098. Finance and Economic Development Standing Committee recommended approval. Items 15 through 17, ordinance 101, 102, and 103. Committee referral was waived on all 3 items. All will be retained on this evening's consent agenda. Items 18 through 20, ordinance 2025, 104, 105, and 106. Land Use, Housing, and Transportation Standing Committee recommended approval. Items 21 through 25, ordinance 2025, 107, 108, 109, 110, and 111. Finance and Economic Development Standing Committee recommended approval. Item 26, Resolution 2024-R041, Land Use, Housing, and Transportation Standing Committee recommended striking this item. So this item is to be stricken this evening.
Councilmember Lynch.
I believe we spoke about this, but have a request to move this to the regular agenda.
So at the time of the informal meeting, if that is the will of council, doing the agenda amendments, if you would make that motion and council can then vote on that motion to actually consider the item and have it on the, and it would be considered on the regular agenda.
Amendments, got it, okay.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay, so at the time of the agenda amendment, Ms. Lynch will make a motion to actually have that paper moved, if that's the will, and if it gets second, then council will then vote to take that paper off of the agenda amendments and to actually consider it, and it will be on the regular agenda. Okay?
I guess, can I ask if it needs
Yes.
any amendments, will it be referred back to a committee again, or is it necessarily, do we know what path it would take?
That will be the discussion, your discussion.
that would be a part of the public hearing on the paper as well, getting those questions.
Item 27, Resolution 2025-R018. Land Use, Housing, and Transportation Standing Committee recommended approval.
Madam
sorry.
Clerk, hold one second.
Yes.
And I don't think okay, now it's on. Councilmember Robertson?
Yes. I just want to share, which I think, Ms. Lynch, you may already be aware of this, but I want to make sure that we're clear on it, as to the reason why the recommendation is to strike the paper, just from what discussion we had in committee with the administration. The paper requests for a study to be done in regards to the installation of the photo speed cameras. The administration have completed that study, and have also proposed some recommendations as it relates to the study, the costs and the readiness of the administration to actually implement the plan, or the results of the study. And so the reason why the request was to strike it was not because we didn't support the essence of what is before us, but the fact that the administration has taken time to actually complete the study and to identify specific locations for installation, and also spoke to the administration of it, the costs that would be associated with it, and what leverage we have at this time. Now, I have received some comments from citizens in regards to their concern as it relates to the 600 and 700 block of South Belvedere Street, and concerns that this is a really, really, really dangerous intersection of streets there. And we have asked the administration, considering that to be the case, as to whether or not there is an active plan that can be put in place to address that intersection that is identified as a request of the study. But that was the reason why the paper was recommended to be stricken, because the study has been done. But I just wanted to make sure that the council was fully aware of that.
Thank you. And I'm sure there'll be more discussion as a part of the public hearing as well. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Item number, as I was stating, item number 27, Resolution 2025-R018, Land Use, Housing, and Transportation Standing Committee recommended approval. Item 28, Resolution 2025-R019, Finance and Economic Development Standing Committee also recommended approval of this item. On the regular agenda, we have item 29, ordinance 2025-099, Finance and Economic Development Standing Committee recommended approval, and that item will be on this evening's regular agenda. Item 30, ordinance 2025-100, Finance and Economic Development Standing Committee recommended a continuance, and so this item is to be continued until the July 28th council meeting. And Madam President, those are all the items on the docket.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's proceed.
The next item is a discussion item. I think first up, we have the water treatment plant update.
Welcome, Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Madam President and members of council. I did go ahead and produce a presentation, but I know I'm going to do a discussion item. I'm happy to go over it in the presentation format or just a verbal discussion with you, whatever your pleasure may be.
I think we would appreciate a brief update. I mean, you can scroll through this, but an opportunity for any Q&A as well. So I'm not sure how.
Yep, we can definitely do that.
Do you want to start with this? And
No, what I'll do is I'll just go through an update on the water treatment plant and then do a Q&A. And then if you guys have other questions that are in the packet, feel free to answer and address those questions. This will be made available in the future, so everybody can look at it as well. So as you guys are familiar with it, we did have an incident in Monday where we had a turbidity issue at the water treatment plant, which resulted in us having to take the filters down at the water treatment plant. We have subsequently gone through and did a review of that. We did have two boil advisories, water advisories in two separate zones in the water treatment distribution system. And subsequently, we very proactively, aggressively pursued to get that back into lifting that boil water advisory as soon as possible. And that came off around Thursday around 2:30-ish. That was when the boil water advisory got lifted. And looking at the incident in and of itself, there's two primary factors that came to light. One being poor water quality, and then the second one being preventative maintenance or corrective maintenance that was done on the sedimentation basins, the plate cellars. In discussing with VDH, they did a comprehensive review of the water quality up and down the James to see what that water quality looked like. They did confirm that there was poor water quality in that segment of the James. And then also there was a limited alkalinity in that raw water, and that could exacerbate this condition as well. And so one recommendation that will probably be coming to light from this is augmenting alkalinity in the water treatment process. We'll be looking at that to make sure that we can add sufficient alkalinity to prevent further poor solubility in the sedimentation basins and ultimately in the filters. And then the subsequent one was the sedimentation basins themselves and the maintenance that was done on the plates. That plate maintenance is where they do alum dosing. So alum sludge accumulates on those plates, and if you don't clean them periodically, that builds up, and it can have an ultimate catastrophic release. In this instance, that is what occurred at the water treatment plant, and ended up clogging the filters, which required them to shut off sequentially the filters and then restart the treatment plant at a much lower production rate than normally is for the demands at hand. And they quickly returned those back into operations, back up to full production by the end of the evening. But we did have two boil water advisories at that time. I'm looking at what we can do to prevent this type of event in the future. There's a couple of items. One is doing corrective actions in a more preventative maintenance item. So those cleaning of the basins and drawing them down and clearing out that sludge, that's now been established in a routine preventative maintenance item, not a corrective on-demand item. And that frequency has been set up to do weekly cleanings, rotating between each of the basins. There's 4 basins. So an example being week 1, you would clean basin 1. Week 2, you would clean basin 2. Week 3, basin 3. Week 4, basin 4. And then week 5, you revert back to basin 1. That ensures those basins are clean in a very prescriptive manner and doesn't allow the sludge to be built up. Another item is looking at the efficiencies of the filters in and of themselves, and if there's any way we can do enhancements to the backwash cycles, or in the event that we have to go through the process of doing emergency recovery activities, we limit the amount of time associated with each of those backwashes to go more in a recovery mode to get back up to production in a more quicker manner. That's an item that we're going to be doing moving forward. And then the last item that we're probably looking at is, and we've already got a task order for our engineers, is to review all of our maintenance items associated with the treatment plant and determine if the manufacturer's recommendations are incorporated into the maintenance work order system. And then also looking at the corrective actions that are in place right now and seeing if those can be reverted to preventative maintenance actions in the future, such that you don't have as many on-demand maintenance items and you do more preventative maintenance items. That gives a quick synopsis of the water treatment plant and the activities. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have for that event.
Just I'll get started. Mr. Morris, will that, when we look at the filters, will it be all 22 or just the 18 we were working with that we will stand up for our future?
Yeah, we're looking at all 22 filters, not just 18. A couple of them do have parts that are on order and they're doing the replacement as now. I think we actually got up to 19, so we might just have 3 that are out of service now. But we are moving forward to get back up to full 22% capacity.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lynch?
Couple different questions, and thank you for your work on this, and very very, very, very stressful to navigate. I can only imagine. Question about the filters, and I'm sure other people have wondered this as well. Is it a normal or current, is what happened, do we think that's happened in the past? And if so, like, was our drinking water safe? Or are these kind of work orders or delay in work orders like a relatively new thing because we're now checking back on them
Yeah,
and
to
being
speak-
more diligent?
Yeah, I guess the question is there indication that in the past, things of similar nature may have gone unnoticed? Now, I will say that the drinking water was safe during those times periods. One of the things that has exacerbated this condition was the fact that the Bird Park Reservoir was out of commission for half of the capacity. In the past, you had additional capacity in the event that you needed to take the filters off and backwash them to get everything back to the water quality that you needed to be safe and reliable. You had that additional buffer or cushion per se where you could do this. In the event that this was reported out, I can't speak to that because I wasn't around for that. But they do have very prescriptive guidelines around making sure that the water remains safe and of high quality. And in the event that the filters do start to clog, staff did the right thing, which is taking them offline to make sure that, you know, the purity of the water is maintained. And then also reaching out to our regional partners, asking them to reduce demand requests so that they can sustain the system as long as possible. I will say that in that handout, I listed a bunch of standard operating procedures. I know my middle name is now in standard operating procedure. Of items that we've already addressed and sent to VDH for review. I am very pleased in the communication that was done, at least from a regional partner perspective and a regulatory perspective. That did improve drastically over this event. And I believe staff took the appropriate action to preserve health in the community. But in the past, if you had that additional buffer capacity, you would have never known if an issue popped up because ultimately they would have been able to take the plant down, put it back up, and met demands.
Councilmember Gibson.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for being here, for ensuring that it didn't go another week, and for quickly identifying the root cause. That is much appreciated. I know that there was some initial thought that it would take some weeks to really get to the bottom of it. I wanted to follow up. You know, I've sent an email with a number of questions that I'm hoping to get clarity on. But I think the big question that I wanted to ask is just about that oxidation system. Since we met last Wednesday, as you were not certain, you know, why that oxidation system was down. And so I'm wondering if you've gotten any additional information and if you have an understanding now of when this system, the oxidation system, which I understand is separate from the filters, but when that oxidation system will be up and running again.
Yeah, the oxidation system you're referencing is actually an oxidation agent, potassium permanganate. That's usually done to treat iron and magnesium in the system. I believe in discussion with staff that it was taken offline because there wasn't a need to actually dose at the time. I believe that was taken offline in December of 2024. When we wanted to take it back online, we're going to have to go through and do a flushing of the piping, verification that the pumps are operable. We can go ahead and do that now, but in the event where we need it, we would probably have trigger points. Basically, do we need to treat for iron or magnesium, or if there's any type of organics that we need to remove?
Thank you. One other follow-up question. So in April, when there was the chemical release that included the fluoride, were there other chemicals that were included on that as well?
Yeah, there's no other chemicals. It was just purely fluoride, and it was from the fluoride tank itself. In the notice of alleged violation from VDH, it kind of outlines the volumes and the chemical that was impacted. I think it was roughly around 5,900 gallons of fluoride at the time.
Thank you.
Councilman Breton.
Thank you. So, yeah, I guess I want to thank you again for just how well you've been able to solve these problems as they come up and address them transparently. I have been pleased to see how quickly the communications are going out to our regional partners and to us and to the city. So that is definitely an improvement, and probably based on, the January new SOPs that we've seen. And I think, though, one thing that I really am hoping for, and my residents are hoping for, is kind of like a bigger picture about the progress that we're making. Because I think every time there's an issue, they say, "Oh, well, good news. Director Morris has a plan, for new SOPs based on the problem that we just found." And I think that what they really need to see is the bigger arc about where reliability is headed, right? And the path to get there. So rather than, don't worry, every time a problem comes, we'll be able to fix it really fast. I think we want to see, okay, now that we're getting out of reactive mode, we've had a couple of months, to figure out where everything is. Where are the risks, and what are all the steps we're going to take to mitigate those risks before they become problems, right? And so, and I imagine that might involve changing procedures, changing training, making new investments, and we can't necessarily just snap our fingers and all of a sudden all the procedures are much better than they were last year, right? But knowing the path and the amount of time it's going to take to get there, I think is really going to help people see and understand how long until they know that the water will always be reliable and that their bills will always be reliable and all those things. So I would really love to see that plan for identifying those risks ahead of time rather than reacting afterwards. And I guess maybe I can ask you a question. Does that sound like something you can do?
Most certainly. You can actually see in the packet that I handed out, there is a kind of a 1 to 10 year plan of action to kind of go over what our goals, our targets are going to be in the upcoming years. And I'll also be happy to kind of outline this in like a memo to council members, just to kind of show you where we are, where are the inherent risks associated with it, and some of the challenges associated with it. This is going to be an uphill battle. There's a lot of things that we need to do and correct. It's going to be a bumpy road, but I'm here for the long haul. I'm here to make sure we get these improvements we need. But there are challenges. So I just want to acknowledge that this is going to be difficult. It's not a snap of your finger type discussion. There's a lot of investments we have to do. There's a lot of commitment. And there is also a lot of changes in the way that we do business. I've highlighted in the packet, which we'll post, a very minutia of items that we've already identified over the last 4 months, the way that we can enhance DPU and make it a better running utility. But there's always going to be that need of trying to find that additional issue. And then going through that plan I outlined in the packet, which goes through year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4 and 5, and then the last 4 to 5 years, kind of highlights where we're going to put our focus. But again, once that's posted, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, or if you want to flip to the cheat sheet, I can answer any questions.
Oh, well, no, I'm glad to hear that you're on the same page there. That's wonderful.
And thank you, Councilman Brett and Mr. Morris. I think it would be helpful to have the table, if you will, that delineates the categories as being question raised, status, timeline, those kinds of things would be helpful. So, and I do see that we have a good amount of that here. I know that there are a lot more, though.
Yeah, and give me a little bit of grace. I did that this weekend, trying to get caught up from the weekend. Or the week of trying to be on clock 24/7. So it was very rushed, but I'll be happy to expand if you guys need any expansion.
Thank you. Councilmember Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, sir. I have a couple of questions. And I would have preferred that we did the presentation to walk through this, because you do have a lot of information in this presentation that I think it would be beneficial to the council to get a better understanding what each one of these proposed phases that you're recommending, from phase 1 through phase like phase 6 through 10, that will go into 2034, which is quite a few years out. And I am not sure that I'm fully appreciating exactly what how you have prioritized each one of those phases and what is involved to make those phases a reality as it relates to staffing, mechanical equipment, as well as budget. As we are quite aware, our capital improvement budget is very limited right now, and I would assume that I don't want to make the assumption that the cost that is associated with implementing these phases will not be cost to the capital improvement budget of the city, that they would be actually cost that is addressed through DPU and our utility company. But I'm not sure of that based on what I'm looking at here. The other thing that I'm not really sure that I understand, the calls that I have received over the weekend has really been very challenging as it relates to our standard operating procedures for operation, for maintenance, and any other additional major components that we should take into consideration, and whether or not I have enough information that our staff can follow. You know, I see your SOP here, and you've got 17 different categories. It's difficult for me to really do an oversight analysis to determine whether or not we are being effective with those without particular definition of goals and standards that would be defined. So even with communication, if the SOP really define what are the standards or procedures that we're going to follow, and as the council's role and responsibility to be able to make sure that we are ensuring that the accountability is actually being done as it is presented in this report, doesn't give us enough indicators to determine the effect of that and how that is going to be reported back to the council on a regular basis so that we can say we're on point or we're off point. So I guess I'm asking for a few things. That is, I need more definition. I need to be able to put this into a format that I can measure outcomes and results based on your standard procedures that you've adopted with more definition than what you have here. Budget, what staffing is required. I am suspicious that what is currently in the budget does not match your phases or even your SOPs. And without budget and the indication of the exact staffing that you feel like you would need and any other mechanical equipment, those kind of things, replacement, I'm not sure that what we are looking at give us the detail of information with a means of measuring it to make sure that our citizens know that we are on top of this. I respect the fact that this is more information than I know. I don't know how to operate this kind of system. But I would like to know whether or not what I'm asking for is something you can provide, and if so, when.
Yes, most certainly. So one of the slides actually talks on performance measures. We're actually going through the process of updating our strategic plan for DPU, all of which actually will have a reporting mechanism where we go through on a quarterly basis, kind of reaffirm where we're meeting our metrics. That actually goes over both training and then capital improvement progression on the projects. And then on an annual basis, we're actually going to be publishing an annual report for DPU. So you can see, open the door per se, open the window into how we operate to make sure that we're accountable, making sure that we're doing the things that we say we're doing. And then I also would be happy to sit down in future sessions. I know I put a lot of items on there. just to show you that we are working to make a drastic improvement in DPU. And I'd be happy to discuss in detail one of those items or two of those items as time permits, to get the council caught up on those improvements and give the public the opportunity to see the enhancements that we're doing, to also hold us accountable for the actions we're doing, but give that viewpoint that you're asking for, and that accountability, and discuss the capital needs that we may need in the future years once we identify those, proactively instead of right during the budget session, so you can get a taste or a feel for the costs associated with these improvements.
So, Mr. Morris, yes. Well,
But you can finish.
I want to make sure that we don't lose that item. I know that we're talking about you coming back with the Haggerty report, which will have some additional information for us. And so it seems to me maybe an OD session where we can really dig in and have opportunity and time to review, question would be helpful. We have our next OD is July 1st, Monday. Is it possible, given the additional specificity that's being asked for, that Ms. Councilmember Robertson has already indicated the table that was asked about and delineating status time, all of that, would that be?
You most certainly, whatever the pleasure of the council, I'll be
Okay.
happy to do that and accommodate. I would recommend trying to narrow the focus a little bit because I did put a lot of those items. So if you wanted to like focus on one particular item over another, I can kind of narrow the presentation so we can have a lot more detail. And maybe we can do this in multiple sessions rather than just one.
Okay, we can follow up on that. I'm going to go back, Councilmember.
I have a follow-up question. I can appreciate your answer as it relates to incremental information. This is a lot of information right here, for me, without a lot of detail on some of this to have any assessment of what it really is going to mean for us. The master plan that you're speaking of, we've been operating this plan for many, many years. And this is the first 6 months of 21 years of experience that I've seen this level of interruption in service. And so I'm concerned that for the past 21 years, I've not seen this kind of interruption of services except in this past 6 months, which is it raises all kinds of questions of along as the reason why 21 years we haven't seen this, but now in 6 months period, we're seeing this level of interruption as it relates to where we are. And so the master plan that you're speaking of, one of the things that is important to me is to get a better assessment of where we are so that when I'm looking at a master plan, I know what the master plan is putting in place and changing. Do you have SOPs at the present time? First question. Second question, you said something about a quarterly report. Could you send us an outline of what you would put in that quarterly report so that if we want to see something different, we can let you know now that we want to see something differently? And then, of course, the annual report will be a combination of your quarterly report. So that's easy enough to follow. But there's also been conversation in the media as it relates to us considering a regional utility authority. Is there a discussion being had about such that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, I'll talk to all of these things. So the first one is the master plan discussion. I believe the last master plan was circa early 2000s. And so that was the last time it got updated. We're going through the process now of going through and updating master plans on a very prescriptive timeframe, and that's about every 5 years. And that's to give you the ability to go through, do condition assessments, outline the capital improvements you need to do. And that's to prevent just what you're talking about, the opportunity for you to let things go to the wayside. You want to make sure that master plan is addressing those items. So that's the first item. The second item is SOPs. I do have a bunch of SOPs. These I'd be happy to provide some of them to you if you wish to see them. Some of them are technical. I don't know how much interest would be, but I'm happy to help you with those and walk you through them. And then the discussion on Regional Water Authority. I'm of the mindset that we are regional partners and we need to cooperate with one another and make sure that we have the resources in play to help one another. Prime example of this being when we had the Canal Street repair that we had to go through. We immediately contacted our regional partner in Henrico and asked if they could reduce flow, and then we could fill our tank back up. And then we coordinated that actual repair with them. I just was up pretty much all night last night doing that coordination effort on Canal Street and trying to stay in active communication with them. I see those as assets. So Hanover County, Chesterfield, we were having discussions on how that could be in the future. There's a lot of restrictions on regional authorities. There's a lot of stuff you have to go through to establish a regional authority. This could be in the vision of a joint partnership. It could be in a vision of sharing capital costs, direct, indirect costs. We have very prescriptive contractual agreements with our regional partners, Henrico, Chesterfield, Hanover, and we abide by those contractual agreements, which state, what are the obligations, what can you review, and the approval or disapproval of projects associated with that. I see that as the context of what you're talking about and seeing how we can use our existing agreements, how can we better those relationships, and how we can make this water treatment plant a better regional water treatment plant. To be quite frankly, I don't know where those conversations are going to go, but my overall end goal is to make sure that this is both protective of the city of Richmond's residents, but also our regional partners as well.
It's to a conversation about a regional authority is yes.
There's always a potential to do a regional authority, but there are a lot of steps you have to go to do that. So it's not a simple snap of the finger type discussion.
I appreciate that it's not a snap of the finger to put it in place. The question I'm asking is whether or not we are having a discussion as it relates to a regional authority. I appreciate what has to take place to get there. It's different than speaking to regional collaboration and those kinds of things and agreements. An authority is a whole different conversation. So I guess that's the question I'm asking. I'm not suggesting that it will result in that. I'm asking whether or not the conversation is elevated to the degree of considering a regional utility authority.
Yeah. The levels that I've had discussions with have been with my counterparts in the regions, DPU directors, and all of mine have been focused on how we can enhance that regional collaboration and discussions. Talking about a regional water authority, that would be the council members' discussion and the administration's discussion, not for a DPU director. I would be brought in once they decide they want to go that path, but at this point, most of my discussions have been on collaboration.
Thank you. Put a pin in that one and come back, because I know that there are, exploratory discussions about how we can better collaborate with our regional partners, and the form that it will take has not been ascertained. But there are some preliminary steps you're taking a look at and with the various partners, so more to come back to us. Thank you. Councilmember Albabacher.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a few questions. As it relates to the, you referenced in your report both preventative maintenance and sort of reactionary maintenance. Is there a reason? I think somebody said this was like sort of this was left as a more reactionary maintenance issue. Does that have anything to do with the transition from the prior plant superintendent to our new acting plant superintendent? Like I mean, I would just assume that maintenance was always sort of on a schedule. So it was surprising to hear that it was not.
So in reviewing the maintenance work orders, those have been on-demand requests in the past. They traditionally have been anywhere between 1 month to 2 month in cleaning frequency. to prevent a potential in the future, depending on what the dosing rate is, and trying to be like going to the minimum standard. That's why we developed the preventative maintenance to go on a weekly to ensure that each of those basins get cleaned on a monthly basis. But they have been traditionally on an on-demand basis. And so that would be an operator would identify a collection of alum sludge and say, this basin needs to be cleaned. Then it would initiate a work order from the maintenance staff, and then they would go through the cleaning route.
Thank you. And then you talked a little bit about how we're going to change how we're doing business. And I wanted to reference something in your slide deck, but we didn't talk about it, which is the sort of customer experience with DPU. I mean, I've gotten a number of customers, neighbors, residents that have reached out because they've gotten $9,000 water bills. And in some cases, these are multiple months on end. And I noticed that you had referenced something about maybe like, I would assume in 2025, we could have a billing system that said, hey, somebody who had a $250 water bill last month and now has a $9,000 water bill this month, like that's a flag. And before that resident even gets that bill, we're sort of putting DPU on alert. Is that something that you're working towards?
Yep. And so in that packet, you'll see what's referenced as an exception report. That exception report is just what you're referencing. It's those quantity of individuals that have high consumption on their bills that need to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis to ensure that the bill is accurate. We have instituted a standard report. It gets published on a weekly basis that's reviewed by a senior deputy or myself to show where that status is. Now, we currently are going through and clearing a backlog of those exceptions. So there are still some out there, several thousand, I would say, that we're trying to rectify. And that means that an exception will be like you have an exception in 1 month, your bill doesn't get processed due to the high amount, and then the next month that may go out on the next month billing, and you even get a higher escalation. And so those are the references you're talking about. Somebody's getting an $8,000 or $9,000 bill. That's because multiple of those exception reports triggered at the exact same time or month to month to month, and they built up over that individual. The new processes or changes in the business that we're pushing forward gets a much quicker review, a much more oversight of those actual exceptions to ensure that they didn't get to that process. We also mentioned in the report how we are going to be doing leak adjustments and trying to proactively get to those before it becomes impactful to the customer and get them the high consumptions. Realistically, customers want to know when they have the leaks as soon as possible because they want to be able to fix them. And those bills that come in because of a substantial leak does have significant impact to residents because nobody can afford a $1,000 bill. And you want to make sure that we can get those corrected in a much quicker fashion. One of the things that we are moving forward with is Project Synergy. That's a customer interface portal. That's going to go live in February 14th. And that's going to be a much more dramatic change in the customer experience, a lot more transparency, and a lot more ability within the system. There's actually a new ability that will allow us to dispute a bill. And so a lot of times you see that we've ramped up the dispute process from being 3 months, try to get it down to 1 month because it's really unrealistic for having somebody 3 months to be evaluating a high bill. And you don't want to have that impact. That's a looming concern, right? So if somebody's fearful that they're going to get disconnected because they have this high consumption bill, and you always get that red warning on your bill that says you're going to be cut off. And that's something that customers have a concern for. The new system allows us to basically annotate and have a disputed bill. And so that no longer will populate in the bill, and they will get their normal bill amount, and that disputed amount will be researched in the background. And then once it comes to fruition, we'll adjust it. And so it'll be seamless for the customer. So they will no longer get that red flag that there's still an ongoing issue. And so a lot more functionality will be in the new system. And that, in conjunction with the ways that we're changing the practice around, should have a more unified or convenient customer experience.
So will the Project Synergy replace the MyHQ billing system that isn't what you're currently under?
It will be an aspect of it. MyHQ will be built into the Project Synergy. It's the customer portal. You'll be able to log into that and pay your bill. You'll be able to make up payment plans with that. You won't have to go to the Promise Pay. You can be baked into the entirety of that one system.
Okay, and then until February, what is your recommendation to residents with very high outstanding
Yeah.
utility bills?
Escalated, that's not fair to you. If you have those bills, I'm happy to go through 311, call our call center, and in the event that they're not responsive to you, my email, my phone number is on the webpage. I'm putting that out there. It's several hundred, several thousand, but I am always responsive to the residents, and I will get it resolved. So that's my gap until we get this solution rectified. Hopefully in the future, that's not a lot, but I'm always committed to making sure the residents gets their bill adjusted.
Thank you. And then just one last question about the status of Canal Street.
Was that again?
What is the status of the Canal Street repairs, and are you anticipating them being completed this evening? I know that there was a little bit of
Yeah.
delay.
So last night, we went in and we installed 2 line stops on the major pipes. Those went through and got installed seamlessly. When we went to go isolate one of the smaller lines, one that had been previously isolated on Thursday, that line no longer isolated. The valve turned freely, which means that valve is failed. And so in order to actually isolate that line, we have to do a line stop on that line as well. They're going to do the install of that tonight. That's going to be around 10 o'clock. We have confirmation that actually came on site around 2:30. So we do have the line stop available. Once we get that installed, we'll close the other lines. And then once we get pressure off the pipe, we'll go in and do the repair. So we're anticipating tonight is going to be the night that it all gets done. And then we've already coordinated with Henrico. All their tanks are topped off. All of our tanks are on the way to being topped off. We've been monitoring every couple hours. And so again, it'll be no impact to our customers or the customers in Henrico as we do this during low demand periods.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, and I think Vice President has not had opportunity to ask a question because I'm mindful we have one more presentation and then we have a closed session. So, Councilman Jordan.
Thank you, President Ubel, and thank you, Director Morris. Really appreciate having you at Government Operations. Just going to follow up on a couple of questions that we sent you in that meeting. Obviously, being at half reduced capacity with our reservoir is less than ideal, and we're finding out each time we have an issue at the water plant how much that matters. So have you had an opportunity to see any way to shorten the amount of time we have left with that reduced capacity at the reservoir?
Yeah, the best thing you can do in this is change your operating bands on your water tanks to try to make sure that they're at a higher elevation. We're looking at those to see if there's any wiggle room in that. What we're talking about is hours, not days. And so in that instance, it does matter. We can talk about the turbidity event. Several more hours would have given you additional capacity, so you wouldn't have to do a boil water advisory. So any of those incremental changes that we can do could be the difference between maintaining a pressure of 21 pounds and going down to 15. So we are going and reviewing those, seeing if there's some small incremental changes we can do in capacity. What I mentioned last time at Government Ops is it's a very close water quality concern, because what you don't want to do is improve or diminish your water age in your system. You don't want to make it so old that you start having disinfection issues, residual issues in your system. So it's a very fine balance of getting the extra capacity you need, but also make sure that you maintain water quality. But we're happy to do that, and we're looking at it.
Okay, thank you. And, absolutely interested in discussions about regional authority with the same interests that you've expressed, that our commitment and our responsibilities to the Richmonder. But in the interim of any of those conversations, the collaboration is really key. And I guess I'm curious what the SOP around when we have to ask for a county to disengage with our system if we're having an issue, because it sounds like that's another critical piece of us being able to rebound in the moment.
Yep, and so those are actually a discussion that can be made both at the chief operator and superintendent levels, and also my level as well, and the senior deputy level. In this instance, what we have is we have a little bit of cooperation and empowerment with the utility plant operators. They actually have very good cooperation with their counterparts in the regions, and they have those discussions ongoing where an incident happens, they can contact them directly and say, hey, if you can shut down a little bit of your flow, would you mind doing that? Now, the counterpoint to that is, and in the event there is a discussion on their ability to do that or our need to do that, that goes up and gets escalated up one tier. That goes to my level, and then I had those discussions with my counterparts in Henrico, Hanover, and Chesterfield to talk through the logistics of that transition. Similar like how we have with the Canal Street discussion, I'm trying to make sure that we coordinate on a regional basis for the betterment of the entirety of the region.
But I guess to put a finer point on it, if we need, in order to protect Richmond water access, to shut down delivery to a county, is that something that you can do, or are we dependent on them being willing to shut?
There is some degree where we can do that. Some of the lines are gravity fed, so there's not ability to shut them off completely, and that would be something that the county would have to initiate. There's concerns also with that because when you have a infrastructure in place and a pumping system in place, just shutting a valve off like instantaneously can actually cause what is referenced as water hammer, and that actually causes breaks in the system. And so if you were just to go ahead and shut somebody off when they're pulling full flow, you can actually cause a lot of infrastructure damage in their system or your own system. And so that's very, very cautionary to do. There are items you can do or installation of components like flow control valves. They can make you more of a transition so you don't have those instances. And that's definitely something we can look at for our point of entries for our localities to make sure that, we can transition slowly and seamlessly to them without damaging their infrastructure.
Oh, yeah. To be clear, I'm not suggesting that we would just turn the water off on anyone. I just want to again say that that's not what I'm suggesting. It's more the decision point of where it happens.
Correct. I completely understand.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, last question, Mr. Morris. Councilmember Lynch.
We didn't get to your very last slide, but I think it's very important. You have the needs laid out on the right-hand column. And I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but if there were 3 things that you had to impart upon us, what we can do to help support you. And I see you've got change management here, organizational support, DIT, HR, procurement. Can you put a finer point or be more explicit with what help you need and what support you need to move forward?
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussions on what this transition looks like going forward. There's a lot of infrastructure needs, but there's also a lot of automation needs and a lot of capital project needs going forward. There's going to be times when procurement is going to be extremely tasked with the projects, basically what we're trying to get through the system. We've had intimate discussions with them on what those needs are. DPU is happy to pay their fair share to make sure that it's on the ratepayers and not the general fund. That's a discussion we need to have and make sure that we get those resources to support the capital improvement projects. For a DIT perspective, we're obviously going to be enhancing our SCADA systems to make more automation available to the plants and also upgrade some antiquated systems. We're going to have some level of cooperation with DIT and our own SCADA coordinator to make sure that happens. So that's a very high intensity need. And there is going to be instances where it's not a comfortable conversation, and we have to hold our staff accountable for actions they take or do not take. And so that's the HR component. We got to make sure that we do performance management. We have to make sure that we get staff in the seats that they need to be in. And so all of those things, I know I listed time as one of the items too. Those all take time and progression, and they all build on one another. But just in general speaking, that's kind of an overview.
Thank you. Ms. Morris, I want to say thank you. And we'll get the list of items that have been requested from a compendium of the SOPs that you currently have available to additional questions that folks had, as well as, and we know that, the Haggerty report will come forward, the additional information, tabling, et cetera. So, and we'll compile and ask if there are additional questions that we'll get to you in preparation for that upcoming meeting. I want to say thank you for your 24/7 since last week of dedicated service and efforts to get us back up and functional, and your communication to council, but certainly the community in general, and look forward to our work together to get us into the state that we all would like us to be in as short order as possible. But do want to recognize and appreciate your incredible work during this period. Thank you.
Right. And thank you all for your support as well. Thank you.
Okay, we have finance, but briefing. And Ms. White, we know that there'll probably be a need further because of the amount of information, which we appreciate. But we know that there'll probably be a need to provide some few further updates to finance and giving us the, big picture in terms of where we are with some of the major challenges that we've had would be really helpful.
Yes, Madam President, thank you for the opportunity to present. I'm going to run through this pretty quickly. I understand that we have a time limitation, but I do want to cover some really important, pertinent points. So good afternoon, City Council members. I'm Sheila White, the Senior Director of Finance for the City of Richmond. Thank you for the opportunity to present you with an update on the Department of Finance. First, I want to acknowledge the events over the past 3 months and the impact to our residents. Despite our best efforts, we have not delivered on the level of service residents should be able to expect to receive from their local government. From the rebate checks to the errant mailing of debt set-off payments, and most recently, the real estate billing. These events are disruptive to our residents, and they deserve better. To that end, I'd like to share with this body where we are with the real estate remediation, the personal property improvements, and our modernization efforts. And understanding I have a limited amount of time here, I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly. Let's start with the second half real estate 2025 billing cycle. We started our pre-work for the billing cycle in March of this year, working with the assessor's office and the mortgage servicers who hold the escrow accounts for taxpayers to update our records for ownership, address, lender, and payoff changes, which happen between the first and second half billings. As a result, we produced 75,905 bills, not inclusive of the pilot billing and the Public Service Corporation billing. We mailed a total of 53,409 bills, so that needs to be updated. Bills not inclusive of the 15,059, which are opt-in for paperless only. However, 270 real estate bills were mailed to property owners instead of their mortgage servicers, which is a deviation from our normal process. To emphasize, sending bills that are normally paid by the mortgage servicer is a deviation in process. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the bills were accurate. Real estate is our largest source of funding from local taxation. This is an area that has had a lot of attention with standard operating procedures and desktop job aids. The run book is a 161-page detailed document outlining the step-by-step procedures for the real estate billing and is updated at each run of the real estate billing. This is the source of how we run the billing. Just as you see here on the slide, with each bill run, this detailed desktop procedure job aid is executed and updated for the subsequent bill run. So let's follow the diagram from left to right. In the first column, we see the subsequent bill run in Munis, the system of record, for the second half billing of 2024. This becomes the template for the second half billing for 2025. This process was successfully completed and documented by the former real estate manager. In the second column, the first half bill run for 2025 is completed successfully by the real estate supervisor, who was trained by the previous real estate manager. She used the desktop procedure from the previous first half run in 2024 and consulted with the former manager to complete it successfully. In December, we upgraded Munis, the software package, and subsequently tested the bill generation procedure. Sign-off was completed for the bill generation process, and we moved to running the 2025 second half billing. The real estate supervisor, along with the current real estate manager, began the process for the second half bill run using the run book from the second half billing in 2024. All of the steps were run according to the detailed procedure documented in the job aid. Subsequently, through 311 calls, we learned that the lender bills that are normally suppressed in the bill print process were produced and mailed. Since the process followed the detailed run book and processed and validated as expected, we engaged both the tech support at our software vendor, expecting it might be related to the software upgrade, and also DIT to escalate the severity of the ticket to accelerate response time. Our software vendor reported no issues with the configuration of the file. However, DIT reported that looking at the system audit trail, the runbook procedure documenting did not reflect accurately the steps the former real estate manager used to perform the process. And the validation step portion of the documentation did not reflect accurately the record count, which would be used to indicate a successful run. In short, the process was followed and validated as documented. However, the documentation did not reflect the steps needed to be performed or the validation successfully. This would not have been possible for anyone in Revenue Administration Division to uncover. DIT, having access to look at the back end of the system, was able to uncover the discrepancy in the documentation. One, the multiple additional attempts to run the process, and two, the failure to update the screen captures for the successful run and validation. Simply put, the failure to update the run book to accurately reflect the steps to process the file and the validation results led us to where we are today. With this information, we were able to move immediately into remediation, rerunning the process, updating the detailed run book, retraining staff, getting the files to the mortgage service companies, and working with the Office of Strategic Communication with outreach to taxpayers. So to round this out, we will round out the remediation with a sweep of and a review of the accounts that have been impacted for any potential overpayments for the period. So we're going to take a look back when we get to the end of this billing cycle and see if anyone has overpaid. This is going to be performed in the latter half of June and be completed before the end of the accrual period in August, and will consist of the following steps. An account analysis will be performed to determine if the overpayment would result in either a valid credit that could be refunded, remain on the account as a credit, or transferred to another outstanding tax liability. Once the analysis is completed, there will be a proactive campaign to contact taxpayers to provide them with their options for either a refund or to have the account remain with a credit. Let's talk also about personal property, because I know that that has been an area where there have been a lot of questions, and I want to talk about the personal property billing and evaluation and assessment process. In Virginia, the assessment of personal property for vehicles is governed by Code Section 58.1-3503A3 Code of Virginia. This statute mandates that localities use a recognized pricing guide to determine the fair value of automobiles. If a vehicle's model and year are not listed in such a guide, the vehicle may be valued based on a percentage of its original costs. The recognized pricing guide commonly used by Virginia localities include J.D. Power or NADA, their official used car guide. Localities may choose to use values such as clean value trade-in, average retail, wholesale, or loan value from these guides, provided that the method is applied uniformly with classifications of the property. This standard approach ensures consistency and fairness in vehicle assessment across the Commonwealth. So we take a combination of sources to develop the personal property bills. Assessment sources to tell who to assess, and then also valuation sources to tell us how much. I'm not going to spend much time here. This is the timeline of what we've done with RVA Pay. This has significantly improved the quality of the billing process. And this work has been done in an iterative process, with each step of the implementation improving the quality in the billing process. To get to the target state of having a modernized billing system, we've had to take each step of the bill production process and engineer it to remove the manual and human intervention elements which have introduced data integrity and errors into the revenue administration system's records. Steps 1, 2, and 4 have moved from high-touch, high-risk processes outside of the system to a contained click and push button process to begin the preparation of the annual personal property roll book. In step 3, we have moved from a flat file containing VIN, year, make, model driven assessments to using an API to capture the model level features, resulting in more accurate vehicle assessments. With steps 5, 6, and 7, we reduced the time to make bills available to residents and increased the capacity to perform quality control reviews by using exception reporting through over 200 queries on data points. Finally, with step 8, the elimination of the imposition of card transaction fees, we're able to shift gears quickly from the 2024 legislation, putting in what council had asked for and deliver it quickly into production. As a result, the 2025 annual billing for personal property, no taxpayers were charged a convenient fee to pay by card.
And Ms. White, your time is about to expire. You have like a couple of more seconds.
I appreciate that. The last thing I want to illustrate here, and this is one of the things that I think most of you are receiving calls about, and I want to just say that this is an ongoing effort to improve our data quality. We've been working with DMV to cleanse our records. One of the things I've noticed is where there have been manual record updates, those continue to be issues because that data did not convert well into our new system. And those exceptions are really where I'm hearing most of the roles. So I'm happy to complete this presentation in another format. There's a lot more to talk about what's going on in finance. And I know that you guys are really interested in that. So I'm happy to come to you or come to another meeting or forum to address those.
Thank you, Ms. White. There will definitely be invitation to come to other meetings, both in terms of committees, but also as we look at ongoing updates in terms of DPU, but also from finance, and utilizing our OD meetings to that point. So, and what I'll ask members, if you have questions, if we can get those to Ms. White so that she can respond back to us with those, because it's going to, I think there'll be plenty of questions, Ms. White, that we'll need answers to.
Happy
So,
to do that.
okay, if you would accommodate, because we do have a closed session, I would like to make sure we have time to do that. But I do appreciate the overall presentation. And yes, members, if we can get the questions to Ms. White, that would be great. And I'll ask staff to receive those and send you, a full listing.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Madam President, I have a motion. I move that City Council go into a closed meeting pursuant to subdivision A3 and A29 of section 2.2-3711 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act to discuss the disposition of publicly held real property for the purpose of the city center development project, and 2, the award of a contract or contracts involving the expenditure of public funds relating to such city center development project in the terms and scope of such contract or contracts, because discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the city.
Mr. Bratton, will you second that motion?
I second that motion.
Council is now voting on the motion to enter into a closed meeting. Mr. Bratton?
Aye.
Ms. Gibson?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Robertson?
Aye.
Ms. Lynch?
Aye.
Ms. Abubakar?
Aye.
Vice President Jordan?
Aye.
And President Newbill.
Aye.
And that motion has been approved. The closed session will be held in the second floor large conference room.
Thank you.